It was one of those rare occasions when I found myself alone in the house, with only my thoughts. My name is Eleanor, and I am 64. I'm years old and have lived in this peaceful apartment for years. My children have grown up and started their own families, and my husband died a few years ago. I've grown accustomed to the silence that surrounds me, but sometimes, especially on nights like this, the silence feels too heavy. I decided to take a long hot shower to unwind. The warmth of the water always soothed my aching muscles and calmed the thoughts racing through my mind. It had been a long day, and I needed a break from everything. I took off my robe and strolled into the bathroom, feeling the cool air on my skin before turning on the water. But as I reached for the shower lever, I noticed a peculiar noise coming from the faucet. They did not answer. I cranked it again, and nothing happened. The water did not come on since the tap had broken. Just my luck, I found myself standing there. For a brief time, upset and unsure what to do, I took a big breath. My apartment was part of a tiny community, and like all the other tenants, I had the phone number of the plumber who handled repairs. I took my phone and dialed hello, to which a deep, silky voice responded. "Hi, this is Eleanor from apartment 3B, I said, trying to remain cool despite the fact that the shower tap in my bathroom is broken. I need someone to come fix it." There was a small hesitation on the other end of the line, followed by a surprising response. "Of course, I'll come over to have a look. It shouldn't be a problem. I'll be there in about 15 minutes, sighed in relief. "Many thanks." "I'll be waiting," put the phone down, and glanced at the broken tap once again. I had no clue what had gone wrong, but it didn't matter. I wasn't in the mood to deal with it. Aside from that, I always felt more at ease with a professional around when it came to fixing things. As I waited, I paced around the living room, the soft hum of the heater, the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. It was all so familiar. But as I looked in the mirror, a wave of self-consciousness washed over me. I was still in my robe, my hair tied up in a loose knot. I felt a little frumpy, a little out of sorts. The truth was I hadn't had anyone in my life in a long time, and the thought of a stranger coming into my space was making me anxious in a way I hadn't expected. There was a soft knock on the door, and I felt a flutter in my chest. I quickly adjusted my robe and opened the door to find a man standing in the hallway, tall with dark hair and a friendly smile. He was holding mace. He emanated a warmth that immediately put me at ease. "Hello. Wonderful evening. I'm Samuel the plumber," he murmured in a low, calming voice to Mrs. Eleanor. "I got your call." I nodded, trying not to appear flustered. "Yes, thank you for coming so quickly." He stepped inside and I showed him to the bathroom. "It's just this shower tap," I explained, gesturing to the sink. "I've tried everything, but it seems to be stuck." Samuel kneeled down in front of the faucet, inspecting it carefully with his strong hands and confident movements as he disassembled the tap. I couldn't assist, but I watched transfixed by the way his fingers worked, the way he bent and adjusted his posture as he fixed the broken part. There was something about it that stirred something inside me. I quickly turned away, not wanting to be caught staring. My heart was beating a little faster, and I couldn't deny the desire bubbling up inside me. It had been so long since I felt anything like this. So long since someone had been in my life to make me feel alive, to make me feel noticed. It looks like I nodded, glad for his skill. He grinned, raising his eyes to meet mine. For a brief moment, I perceived a hint of recognition or even curiosity in his gaze. But before I could process it, he returned to his work, his broad shoulders flexing as he moved, taking another step back, causing the heat in my cheeks to rise. I didn't want to admit it, but there was something about him that made me feel alive. His presence was intoxicating, and as much as I wanted to pretend it was just a simple repair job, I couldn't shake the feeling that I looked at Samuel again. Watching him focus intently on the faucet, His hands were so sure and capable, and I wondered what it would be like to have those hands touch me, to feel that confidence extended to me. I quickly shook the thought from my mind. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. I was older. I had lived a full life. These types of ideas weren't essential. I told myself, but I couldn't ignore the agony in my chest, the tug that seemed to get greater with each passing minute. When Samuel finished replacing the tap, he rose up and wiped his hands on a cloth. Everything should be okay now. I nodded, attempting to catch my breath. Thank you. You've been a huge help. Problem, Samuel remarked, smiling at me. His eyes stayed on mine for a time, and I sensed an underlying tension. It wasn't simply thanks or courtesy lingering in the air. There was something more I couldn't quite name. I'll leave you to go back to your evening now, he added as he packed his equipment into the box. I'm glad I could contribute. I stood there for a while, wondering what to say. Something inside me prompted me to speak and ask him to stay just a little longer. But I refrained. I couldn't be that upfront. It had been too long since someone made me feel this way. Would you like to stay for a cup of tea? I said, astonished by the request, and I'd like to properly thank you for coming out. Tonight, Samuel paused, his eyes meeting mine. He didn't answer immediately, but there was a spark in his gaze, an unmistakable warmth that made my heart flutter. I'd like that, he said softly, the smile on his face deepening as I led him into the living room, trying to act normal, though my hands were trembling just slightly as I put the kettle on. Samuel sat on the couch watching me as I moved around the kitchen. I was so aware of the sound of my own breathing and the way the air was moving that I laid the glasses down on the coffee table and sat down, feeling a rush of nervousness. This is very delicious, Samuel murmured, his voice low as he sipped his tea. It's not every day that I get to sit down after a work like this. I grinned, attempting to hide my nervousness. I'm delighted you are enjoying the silence stretched between us, but this time it wasn't awkward, it was charged like the air before a storm. I sensed the growing tension and my heart pounding. There was something about him, something that drew me in before I knew it. He stood up, and the space between us shrank, and my breath hitched. His hand reached out, gently brushing my arm. It was a small, delicate touch, but it sent a jolt of electricity through me. Eleanor, he whispered, his voice soft, but I glanced up at him, my heart beating in my ears. Years of loneliness, the anguish I'd kept buried for so long, it all poured to the surface in that moment. I didn't know what to say or what to do, but as Samuel bent down, closing the space between us, I didn't draw back. I didn't want to. His lips brushed against mine tentatively at first, but when I responded, it deepened, and the kiss became more urgent, more filled with the longing we both shared. His hand moved towards my chest, opening up my robe and then my bra, and starting kissing, drawing me closer, and I could feel the heat of his touch spread through my body when we finally pulled away. Breathless. We did everything I've wanted for so long, he confessed softly. I wasn't sure if you... I was feeling the same way. I smiled softly and laughed. I believe I have something to say now, Samuel grinned, his hands softly caressing my face. I don't want this to end, Eleanor, and just like that, in the silence of my apartment, the weight of all the years seemed to melt away. Samuel stayed for a little longer, and as the evening deepened, the air between us grew thicker. With unspoken words, we sat together in the soft glow of the living room light, sipping our tea. The silence between us was no longer awkward, but rather filled with an electric tension. I had always thought that passion and love were things of youth that faded with time. But tonight, as Samuel's gaze met mine, I realized how wrong I had been. I didn't want to. I felt different, alive. The emptiness that had clung to me for years seemed to have lifted, and in its place was something new, something full of hope. I moved to the kitchen, preparing my usual cup of tea as I went about my morning routine. My thoughts repeatedly returned to Samuel, I couldn't help but smile at the way he had gazed at me, the way he had kissed me. Everything about him had made me feel wanted, cherished, and seen. It wasn't just the physical proximity, it was the emotional connection we had shared and the ease with which we had opened up to each other. There was a tap on the door, and my heart missed a beat. I had no clue who it might be at this hour, but as I opened the door, I saw Samuel standing there, smiling brightly. "Good morning," he whispered quietly, entering inside without waiting for an invitation. "I couldn't stop thinking of you. I wanted to see whether you were all right." I gave a grin. My heart is racing at the sight of him. Of course, I'm fine. How could I be otherwise? Last night he stretched out to grab me, and I melted into him. "Eleanor and I are fine, I believe. I believe we are both just getting started." I chuckled gently, feeling the weight of the years slip away as I kissed him once again. It was soft this time, but full of promise. The kiss lingered, sweet and long, and I realized this wasn't just a passing moment, it was the start of something. As we stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I never thought I would find love again, particularly after all these years. But Samuel, a man who unexpectedly entered my life, brought me back to life. Over the next few weeks, Samuel and I spent more and more time together each day, and I found myself falling deeper for him and he for me. We talked and laughed. It didn't matter if we were years apart. What mattered was our connection. Given the link that had formed between us, our relationship, while unusual by many measures, was all I had ever wanted Samuel. He was more than simply a lover. He was also my friend, confidant, and companion. He made me feel cherished and significant and attractive, and I reciprocated, regardless of our age difference. What mattered was how we made each other feel alive, treasured, and full of love. And as we sat together on the couch one evening, having a peaceful moment, Samuel asked me whether I ever thought about the future. I smiled, feeling at ease for the first time in years every day, and "I like what I see, Samuel." He took hold of my hand, his thumbs softly caressing my skin, and with that, I realized that no matter what awaited us, Eleanor and I would confront it together. Sometimes love surprises us unexpectedly, and when it does, it enriches our lives in ways beyond our imagination.